Welcome in to episode 322 of the Sources Say podcast, your go-to Kentucky basketball and recruiting podcast on the growing KSR Podcast Network. I am your host, Jack Poke, Kentucky Sports Radio, and I'm not joined by Sean Smith. He is out sick. I wish I could go into the details, but I'm not going to. You can ask him specifically if you like the details of his absence today. But my guy has his arm loose. He's ready to come out of the bullpen. Zach Gagan, the KSR Rapid Reaction Extraordinaire. We have a blast on the post game there, but because you weren't able to be in Knoxville with me, it was just Steven and I rambling. Now you get your chance to get your kind of not so really rapid reactions, but I'm so excited to hear what you have to think about Kentucky's win down at Tennessee before our trip down to Nashville, because you get to make your SEC tournament debut with me. We're going to make Broadway ours. It's gonna be ours for the week.
Yeah, I'm very excited for that. I can't wait to spend hopefully 4 days with Jack Pilgrim inside at KS House, which is just going to be packed and loaded with people that are coworkers and whatnot. So that'll be a lot of fun. But yeah, so this is basically like a long version of the rapid reaction. I don't know what the extended reaction we can call it in this sense, but I loved honestly I loved when it's just you and Steven doing the rapid reactions, because it's pretty much just you two going back and forth of like Steven's fan takes versus the Jack with like the rational takes, and it's just the fusion of them seeing bounce off of each other is really fun to watch. So but I'm glad to be here. Poor Sean, his tummy wasn't feeling too well, so I'll take over for him today, and I'm ready to talk some basketball. We got a big week coming up, and I'm excited for it. Like you said, my first time down in Nashville for the SEC tournament, so I'm extra excited for this run here.
So there's a reason to be extra excited, and it's because 85-81 locks up a 2 seed in Nashville. It was such an important game for Kentucky to win, especially with how things transpired earlier in the day, because Arkansas choked against Alabama. The way that game unfolded, it was either you get a 2 seed with a win or you're dropping down to a 5 with a loss. So there really was no in between. It was either Thursday or Friday start time. And I think fans understand, but it is the difference between a 4-day trip to Nashville versus a 5-day trip is just so unbelievably, or I guess 3 versus 4 is so unbelievably different. That Thursday start is just an absolute grinder. And I could have seen a path, Zach, where I don't know if they would have pushed all their chips in on the SEC tournament. We already heard Cal say our focus is on the NCAA tournament. This is just kind of for fun. So if that's their mindset, even securing the double bye, I couldn't even imagine what would have really gone on had they had to start on Thursday. So it was just such an important game. Tennessee on their end, they were trying to decide whether they can lock up that last fourth number 1 seed. So it was a really important game for them. They were sending off Santiago Vescovi, Josiah Jordan-James, obviously Dalton Connect, his lone year as a senior. Really, really high stake games for both teams. And minus the last 55 seconds, Kentucky basically controlled it for 39 minutes and 5 seconds. It was a blast down in Knoxville.
Yeah, I'm looking at the stat broadcast right now. It says Kentucky led that game for 34 minutes. Tennessee only led for 3. I mean, it was just I don't know if it was their best performance of the year, but I could say it was one of the top 3, maybe even top 2, because I thought the defense was just great all around. They pretty much, I think one of the players, maybe the coach, someone kind of alluded to it after the game, basically said, or no, it was Reeves, Antonio Reeves basically said, yeah, our plan was Dalton Connect, you can go beat us because we're not going to let anyone else do it. And that game plan pretty much worked to perfection. I think they shot so 37.8%, or 37.8% for the game. If you take away Connect shots, I think they're at like 23 or 24% or something. So they just did an excellent job all around. The Chin Coleman line of make the irrelevant guys stay irrelevant. They pretty much had that played out. That's not how it played out the first time in Rupp Arena, because Ziegler and Jordan James had those big games. Ziegler still had a nice game with 17 points and 9 assists, but it didn't feel like he really did much. I feel like some of those points just kind of came at the end, I think he had a big 3 there at the end too, just kind of not necessarily garbage points, but it's kind of stat stuffing type situation. So Dalton Connect cooked Kentucky. Like, there's no other way to put it. He cooked them. He had 40 points. He was getting shots in ways that I was like, that guy just looks like a future pro. He even missed some wide open ones, so he could have had closer to 50 by the time things were all said and done. But yeah, Kentucky they had four guys that scored points for him, and they just said, hey, go get as many buckets as you want, and we'll just outscore this team because we know that we can outscore Dalton Connect on our own. That wasn't the case the first time around. They actually did well on Dalton Connect. This time around, they don't do well on Dalton Connect, and they end up winning. So I was impressed all the way around. Kentucky's playing their best basketball at the best time of the season. Tennessee was probably the hottest team in the SEC before losing to Kentucky, and now Kentucky goes into this SEC tournament riding really high right now. So we'll see if Cal is really all in on this. Oh, the SEC tournament doesn't matter type thing. We'll see about that. If I can continue on my rant here, Jack, there was another point in the post game where Cal was talking about how Tennessee didn't really have much to play for types of thing because they're already locked up their spot, but it wasn't as big of a game for them as it was for Kentucky. And then he pretty much almost said that this was big for Kentucky to get the double bye in the SEC tournament, but he kind of caught himself. I think he realized he was about to say that he actually does indeed care about the SEC tournament because it's clear that they wanted to get that double bye as opposed to not playing, or as opposed to playing on Thursday, which Chuck Martin said as well in his pre-game press conference for that game. So they went out. They had to win this game to get that double bye. They did everything that they needed to do. It was just a really well done overall performance, well coached game from Cal. Just from top to bottom. So I was impressed with everything we saw. The defense is really, they still gave up 81 points, but when the other team is shooting 37% and outside of their best player, they're shooting 25%, you take that every single time, and Kentucky probably wins those games 99 times out of 100. So end of spiel.
And it was how they, you talked about the game plan kind of shifting because the first time it was, let's just try to take Dalton Connect out of the game and see if anybody, because Tennessee is known as a boomer bust Dalton Connect driven team. If Dalton is going nuclear, they win 99% of the time. If you can keep him in check, you win the game. So they came from a right headspace going into the first matchup, but they were almost too focused on Dalton while letting Zakiya Ziegler take shots without anybody within 15 feet. You let Josiah Jordan-James where he wanted. And talking to Chuck Martin before the game, he talked about that. He said, now we have an understanding of just how good those guys are. And this isn't truly a one-man show. I disagree on the surface level that they're not a one, it is Dalton Connect and a bunch of dudes. But I think there was a new mindset going in where, if we can just kind of neutralize everybody else and let Dalton go get his, maybe that's the path to success. And they did that, especially in the first half. It's a rock fight, which is something Kentucky has not done particularly well all season. It starts as a rock fight. The first half is basically just haymaker after haymaker after haymaker, with Kentucky starting to string together some shots at the end of the first half. And they use that momentum into the second and really just take off into an actual track meet where both teams score 52 and it's a high scoring affair. But they kind of played both styles and learned how to win in a different way. And that's what March is all about, learning how to win games in different ways and just kind of overcoming different random adversities. First half, it was, what happens when we're not making shots and you have to, string together defensive stops. Then in this early second, it was what happens when we got to win a track meet. And then at the very end, it was what happens when the sky is falling and the rock, the foundation is crumbling underneath our feet. Can we survive? You kind of got different paths to a win there. For Kentucky to be playing its best basketball going into March, that's what we talked about. It really didn't matter seeding at the end of the day, more than this team just has to be firing on all cylinders and having its best players play up to their potential. And now you have Reed Sheppard making clutch shots. You have Antonio Reeves coming up clutch with big buckets. You have Rob Dillingham going on his little runs. DJ Wagner is a guy that you trust with the ball in his hands late in games. That's 4 dudes that you trust to go win you a game in March. That I'll take that scenario over just about. And shoot, Justin Edwards making clutch shots. Everybody impacted games in different ways. Where you now look at this scenario and go, I believe that this team is going to be able to overcome even any other team's best shot in March, and that's exactly the recipe for success under John Calipari for 14 years now.
Yeah, to go back to your Dalton Connect bit about him, just that's kind of how Tennessee operates. I did a little, or just pulled up a little basketball reference page here. He came into that game with 15 games of 20 or more points. Tennessee was 12-3 in those games. They're now 12-4. Obviously, they don't have many losses, so they actually only have 2 losses when he scores under 20. But it just kind of goes to show that they don't lose in general, but they definitely don't lose when he's getting that many points. Another side note, he has fewer 20-point games than Antonio Reeves this season by 3. So that's, I guess the SEC Player of the Year didn't have as an efficient season. He also had 4 single-digit games, but that's a whole different situation there I could talk about. But yeah, just going back to everything you just said, I just thought Kentucky, it's how they're playing their games right now. That is kind of just different than what they were like a month or 2 ago. It's just everything is more aggressive, more point of attack type stuff. You're starting to see, like you said, DJ's really just rounding into form right now. That he's starting to really shake off that ankle injury. Justin Edwards is just officially good at this point now. You've got like you said, the 4 guards we were just talking about. Those guys all made some sort of all SEC award because they're dudes, and we know we can rely on them to go get a shot. Reed Sheppard is the number 1 pick in the country apparently now, per Kevin O'Connor, who also said Killian Hayes was going to be the number 1 pick, and whatever,
Why are you hating? Why are you hating just for the sake? We haven't even brought that up yet, and you're already coming up with excuses.
Look, Reed's probably going to be a top 5 pick at this point. Like I'll just go ahead and say that I was just flat out wrong on that. I still don't. There's no history that indicates over the last 20 years that Reed Sheppard should be a number 1 pick or a top 5 pick. Or even a lottery pick for that matter. And the kid's probably going to be a top 5 pick. So I'll just go I'll take my little shot at I'm going to take my shot at Kevin O'Connor while I can, because he actually just like recently finally just said that, yeah, I was wrong on the Killian Hayes pick. Obviously he was wrong on that, but I think Reed Sheppard's going to be a better player than Killian Hayes. So I don't even know where I'm getting off on my rant here, but
I think you're coming up with different excuses for different scenarios that contradict one another. So you're painting yourself into a corner, Zach, just because you had a very, very terrible take that Reed Sheppard was not a lottery pick, and you are having to eat your words so quickly, and I love every second of it.
Hey, I'll swallow them whole. I won't even chew. I'll just no one clip that part there, I guess. But what were we even talking about, Jack? Did you ask me something? I got on such a different tangent.
It was really it was riveting and entertaining, and I'm sure worthwhile. That is lost into the ether now, all because of you.
But what I want to talk about real quick is just Justin Edwards. Like I was talking about him just a second. He's just good at this point. As like I said, like he's hitting shots with so much more confidence now. It's just kind of wild to think that this was like the same person like maybe 5-6 weeks ago. He had 3 in a row, or was it 4 in a row against Tennessee, or was it 3 in a row? I think it was 3 in a span of like however many seconds.
It was 3 early, and then he hit a 4th to open the second half that made you
That's
go,
right.
Ooh,
yeah. Well, even his shot to open the very game, I think it was 30 seconds in. He takes like a kind of shot fakes, gets his man to go by him, shoots kind of like a step inside the 3-point line too that goes in. I think his best shot was the one where he was on the baseline and he did the turnaround, like fade away. It was like that's just a beautiful shot. He's just playing with so much confidence. I think he had a bunch of rebounds the other day too. So he's kind of your X factor for this team, if you want to say, because you've got all these SEC guys, and now you've got a guy like Justin Edwards who's really starting to play well. Another thing that kind of stood out from this game was just how game by game it's going to be with these bigs right now. I'm sure you and Sean talk ad nauseum about it, but like I was almost to the point where I was like, all right, it's Big Z or nothing. Just use him, roll with him, see what can work. Big Z couldn't stay on the floor against Tennessee. For whatever reason it was, but Ugo could. He came in, he blocks 3 shots in the first however many minutes. He doesn't score a single point all game, but he was such a kind of part of that is just how Tennessee plays. They want to be rough and tumble. They want to be aggressive. They want to get into you. And when you see a guy like Ugo who's just going to send every shot back there, like, I mean, Vescovi and Ziegler were turning down looks going inside the rim because they just didn't want to get their blank sent back by Ugo. And that was just a perfect game for him. You don't have to score points, especially when your 4 guards are scoring 83 of your 85. So, Jack, you can start talking about other stuff here, and I'll try to stay on track now for the rest of this podcast.
And yeah, we've talked about it on this show. Just how hilarious it is to even have a real take about the front court, and like
You can't right now.
one that you felt confident in and said, you know what? I'm pushing all my chips in on Big Z. It's time to just ride that wave for better or worse. And then the next game, Aaron Bradshaw goes for 17. You're like, damn, what? I don't know anything. Like it, trying to dissect this front court makes you feel so stupid because the ups and downs are just so random and there's no continuity. Like going into this game, Aaron Bradshaw was playing the best basketball of his career, and then he plays 2 minutes in Knoxville. Like there is no, there's nothing to hang on to going into the postseason that makes you think, all right, this is Trey Mitchell's team. We are going to go all in on Trey. Like there is none of that with any of the four bigs. Trey's obviously going to be, coming along a little bit slowly, coming back from injury. He's going to be fine. He's going to be a high impact guy, but the other three, it's impossible to have any real long-term take about any of them. And you're just going to have to ride the wave no matter who's out there. Somebody is going to produce in some way. It might not be scoring. It might just be defense. It might be a big block shot, like what big dunk, lob, whatever. We're just going to have to see all that play out. You can feel confident about what you're going to get out of each of the guards. And, maybe it's DJ's game, maybe it's Antonio's game, maybe it's Reed, whatever. But the bigs are just going to be this like roulette, this game of roulette where you just let it ride and just hope that something good happens. But it's just hilarious. I do want to talk a little bit about Justin Edwards and the growth that he's had from start to finish, the stuff that he's overcome. I've learned a lot digging behind the scenes, talking to people that know him closely, talking to people around the program that experienced the lows next to him and kind of saw what he was going through. There were people that said, going into that Arkansas game, the road trip to Fayetteville where he played 9 minutes, that he wasn't even with the team mentally. Like he was in just such a different planet because he was just so lost, not feeling where, not the player that he was in high school, not the guy, the confident playmaker on both ends that he was, that we've seen him, this large sample size of him being in high school, grassroots, all that. He's just no longer kind of with us. And there was like a concern around the program that like, man, I don't know how that somebody in that headspace can break through. And that's where Reed kind of stepped in and recommended his mental health coach. And, they really, as a collective unit, started digging in on Justin and said, you know what, we're not going to leave you behind, kid. Like, we know what you're dealing with right now. We're not going to leave you behind. It felt like everybody involved kind of just reached out in support and said, we're going to get you across the finish line here and get you back to where you need to be. So to understand the darkness that he was going through and to see the light now, that moment with Stacey Sheppard coming up to him after the game and, being there, he comes out, the cameras start coming up, microphones and all that. And Stacey and her, 606, everybody wait, don't start yet. And like stops everybody and like maneuvers through all the cameras and media guys and like pushes Justin and like just gives him the biggest bear hug on the planet. And like you can just tell that he has broken through and he is just not the player that he was a month ago, 2 months ago especially. And he talked about it a little bit that he was just focused too much on the NBA, that he came in with a mindset of, and again, this is why I was so uncomfortable with people picking him as the number one pick going into the year, because that's not who he was as a basketball player at that point. He was always a lottery pick, but there was stuff to get through to even think about him as a number one pick, the way he plays, the mentality he plays with, all that. So it put unnecessary weight on his shoulders to be something that he has just never been driven and geared to do. So for him to admit that and say, that took a lot out of me. I was just not in the right headspace, thinking of the wrong things, prioritizing the different things, because he in his head now thinks he's a number one pick. Like he has to play like a number one pick. And that does something to people that I don't think people understand how much that does, how much that weighs on somebody. So for him to kind of push all that to the side, reevaluate his priorities and just kind of get them back to where they need to be and just kind of take this grind day by day and make it in this fishbowl at Kentucky, it could have been real easy for him to get into a dark space and never come out of it. So for him to kind of overcome all of those things and get to where he is right now, like, that's what college basketball is all about, man. Like, that's the most beautiful part of college basketball, seeing these guys, find themselves and become who they know they can be internally, and have that Stacey Sheppard and hug at the end of the game. Like, that's what this is all about. And he's going to be you now have a brand new difference maker on your team that you didn't really account for a month ago. And that just completely adds to the level of confidence that you can have in this team going into March.
Yeah, and his role is like, he doesn't, we've talked about forever. He's got four other really good guards around him who can score. He doesn't have to be the guy that needs to go get buckets. Now it feels like most of his shots now are just catch and shoot, dribble, pull up, like getting to your spots, like getting to where you're comfortable. Don't force things, and on the off moments, we do see him try to force things or get out of his comfort zone. Something bad usually happens, whether he turns it over or forgets to dribble or makes a bet, like whatever it is. But Justin's he's a guy that's kind of admitted that he looked a little bit too much at social media and such until the last month or so or two, when he started to talk to the mental health coach. Was it you or Steven that recorded his post Tennessee press conference or little interview there?
Just this last on Saturday. Yeah, it was me. I talked to him. Steven talked to Antonio.
Yeah, but he had a line where he was like, it's like, yeah, we like my siblings go and stay with the Sheppards now. Like, they all hang out. Like, it's clear that the whole team kind of rallied around him too, and it maybe more than just Reed as well. Like, he's talked about it. Like, Antonio even talked about after that Tennessee game, he was like, I made sure that guy stayed in the gym. Like, he's like, I made sure that guy was like always doing what he needed to do. And then, over the last month, when Justin's been more open about talking about the mental health coach, how he's pretty much tried to cut out social media almost entirely. He was talking to you about how he is meditating for 2 or 3 minutes before each game. Like, he's putting the phone down. He's listening to motivational videos. Like, this is stuff that, like, just kind of might sound almost like it's a little much, like he's maybe pouring it on himself a little too much, but it's clearly working, and it's paying off. It's whatever he has to do to get himself in the right mind. He's doing that. He's taking those steps, and I think the hardest part is probably admitting those issues. And I think once you admit that, then it's easier to embrace them and approach them and tackle them in a way that actually is beneficial for you. And that's what we're seeing. And like the number one draft picks, I think it was probably only one outlet. It was probably Kevin O'Connor, for all I know, probably had him at number one at one point. But like, we saw the only reason he was a projected number one pick last summer was because he's kind of like what you want in the NBA right now. He's kind of like a Dalton Connect type, where he's 6'6", he's long, he can score, he can play defense, he can do all these things. That's like, just the NBA is just salivating over those guys, almost to the point where they're overlooking all the other parts of it, where it's like Justin really wasn't a great scorer out of high school. Like, he could score, but he didn't exactly have a great shot. But we're starting to see, especially on the defensive end now, like I'm not sure if I would still call him like a good defender, but I think he's above average. And I think when you're a team like Kentucky that just has to outscore the opponent, you don't need great. I think there's like Brandon Ramsey has some sort of thing where it's just like, just got to be a little bit better than average. Just got to be a little bit better than average. As long as the offense is nuclear and can score 100 points, the offense just has to be a little bit better than average. And it's almost been a little bit more than average over the last month or so. I think they're like 51 in Ken Palm's defense over the last like 2 or 3 weeks or something like that. Coupled with a top 20 offense. Like, those are numbers that can lead to a team making a run. And just adding a guy like Justin it's just like adding a fresh player, like adding a guy that pretty much wasn't there, who was just kind of soaking up dead minutes. You've got a guy now who's actually coming in and contributing. And we're still seeing it in spurts. Like, that's kind of what I continue to harp on, is it comes in spurts, but it's almost to the point where maybe it's just best if it just comes in spurts, because you've got so many other good guards that can go out and score. You don't want to take away from them. So if you can get Justin into these 2-3 minute stretches where he's just wide open and he's just hitting these shots, like, that's all you need to swing games. And that's kind of what we saw against Tennessee, where he makes 3 threes in a matter of however many minutes it is. That's a huge momentum shifter. And then he's going to bring that same energy on defense as well. And it's going to translate. Like, I know it was him and Reeves that were kind of splitting duties on Connect, but it's like we were saying, let Connect score 40 because we know that everyone else isn't going to do enough to overpower, to counter whatever I'm trying to say here, So just having Justin is really is the X factor of this team going into the tournament. If UK can really get Trey Mitchell back to the Trey Mitchell from January, then that's when I'm getting to the point where I'm like, okay, Kentucky really might actually be able to win or at least make the Final Four this year. And I think they're probably still at that point, even without Trey Mitchell having this resurgence. But if they can get him back, then I'm really getting confident in how this team is trending as we get into March here.
And another thing we didn't really talk about, Justin was like a day away from committing to Tennessee. Like Justin was the lock of all locks to Tennessee before
for a while.
Before John Calipari decided to step in and say, I'll take it from here. Thanks. Like, so for him and kind of.
Well, there was a point too. We were thinking Auburn could step in and pick up over Kentucky. I don't know if you remember that as well too.
Yeah, it was so close, and there was almost this sense on Justin's side. Again, talking to the people around Justin during that process, they just didn't feel the love from Kentucky that they were getting from Rick Barnes, and even at the time, Bruce Pearl had kind of come in, and you want to feel that love, you want to feel the appreciation. It just wasn't coming from Cal. So when that tide kind of shifted a little bit, Justin has always loved Kentucky. Justin, this has been his dream school forever. He's wanted this. So when that momentum shifted like 2 weeks before Peach Jam, whatever it was, it kind of became a no-brainer. He knew that this is where he wanted to be. So all those things being said, for him to go down to Knoxville, Thomas Bowling Arena, where that was that was this close to being his home. He was almost Dalton Connect. Like, he was recruited to be that team's Dalton Connect. And then because he went to, Kentucky, they had to find their kind of anchor wing. And it just so happened to be the SEC Player of the Year. Great find on their part. But, there had things bounced, the ball bounced a little differently in this whole scenario. It could have been, Justin being the Dalton Connect of that team. And who would have known how he would have embraced that? And, how much being here, I know his draft stock took a hit from what I think the people around him had hoped, but think about the mental adversity he has overcome that you have to have in the NBA. What happens if, he had gone to Tennessee and had been massaged and it would have been just this perfect situation for him, and he had gone in the draft as the 6th pick or 10th or whatever and hadn't hit that type of adversity? Would he have been able to sustain it? Would he be able to overcome that in the no boys allowed league? Like, how would that have happened going up against guys that are ready to, eat or be in this eat or be eaten world? You never know how, life's funny, you never know how one move impacts the next. And I think it sucks now looking at his draft status, where I think in that ringer thing, he was like 38 or whatever. But when push comes to shove, he's going to be a draft.
He was undrafted. He was undrafted 6 weeks ago. So
yeah, but he's going to go to the draft. He's going to work out for teams. He's going to work his way back into the first round. He'll probably end up going 21st or something. And that guy is going to get a second and third contract in the NBA because of this experience right now. So long-term vision, not short-term, is kind of the theme here. And it's just because he was able to overcome all that. And that's why we're very, very big Justin Edwards fans here on the Sources Say podcast. So Reed Sheppard doing what he did down the stretch, you got to own it.
Pretty good.
You got to own it. He is NCAA Player of the Week, 27 points, 22 in the second half, dagger after dagger after dagger, 7 3-pointers made. A report comes out from none other than Kevin O'Connor that he is the number 1 draft pick in 2024. Number 1. I don't think he's going number 1, but he's a top 5 pick. He is. I don't know how you look at what he's doing in a weak draft class and not look at that high floor that he clearly has and say that guy can't help us for a decade. Like, that's it, the same mindset we kind of had about Cason Wallace is the same kind of vibe I have with Reed Sheppard, where is Kaysen ever going to be a superstar? No. But Kaysen is going to last forever in the NBA because he has tools that nobody else has. He is a floor raiser. You need floor raisers in the NBA. Disagree with the number 1 overall pick comparison with Kevin O'Connor, but he had Derek White as his player comp. And I think that is a very, very interesting comparison for the impact that Derek White is making on the Boston Celtics as a damn near 20-point per game scorer. So eat your words, Zach. The lottery pick of all lottery picks, Reed Sheppard is going to be going top 14, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, he has absolutely played his way into being a lottery pick and a top 5 pick. I'll eat my words. I mean, there's like for a half, you'll be like, okay, yeah, I can see why maybe he's not going to be a lottery pick. And then he does stuff like that, right? Didn't he hit 6 in a row in that second half too? I think he hit 6 straight threes. So that means he started 1 for 4 and then just went off. And I mean, I think the best part about O'Connor's thing is he'd be going to the Spurs, so he'd be playing with Wemby, and it's like I could actually see a scenario where Reed is just throwing lobs to Wemby for the next decade, and they're just winning a bunch of games. Like I could see that one. The Derek White comparison, I still think Reed's defense, it needs work. Like he's not going to be able to defend guys in the NBA like Derek White is right now, which obviously is an unfair comparison because Derek White's been in the NBA for 6 or 7 years now and is like an all defense type guy. I can see the comparison on offense. Like, there's 1,000 different guys you could kind of compare Reed to, but I don't think there's really one clear like archetype comparison for him in the NBA because like I said at the beginning, like history just doesn't show guys like him being really good NBA players or even getting drafted in the lottery, I should say. But the way that he is just so like, it's not a fluke anymore. Like his shooting is just this good. Like he's a 50% 3-point shooter right now. If that translates to 40% to the NBA, he's going to be really, really good. He loves to throw the look ahead passes. They eat that stuff up in the NBA. If the defense, he's probably going to average 2 steals a game in the NBA anyways, if he's a full-time starter because of how he plays. Like the defensive part really it's not going to matter too much, maybe not as much as I was initially thinking once he gets to the NBA, especially if he's teamed up with a guy like Wemby, where it's like, who cares if you get beat? You've got an alien who's probably going to just go gadget his arm out there and grab the ball away and suck it back in. Yeah, this kid is just like, he's SEC freshman of the year, all second team all SEC. Everything was deserved for him, or all the awards that he got. He was just he's clutch. I think he's probably the most clutch player UK has right now. And that's saying something when you've got guys like Dilly, and I think Reeves is there's still kind of that weird narrative that maybe Reeves isn't as clutch as we'd like him to be, or as UK fans would like him to be. But I think he's in that that category now. But Reeves, he's the top of the top when it comes to clutch. So I don't really know what else I can say about him at this point, other than every time I think he is kind of capped at his ceiling of what he's going to be, he just kind of leapfrogs it. Because I've mentioned this 1,000 times, Jack. You and I watched this kid play 2 years of high school basketball at North Laurel. Not once did I ever think he was going to be this good at Kentucky. And maybe that's why my lottery hot take with him was always stupid from the beginning, was because maybe he's just going to be better in the NBA than I thought he would ever be. And like, he's just continues to prove people wrong. So why would I, say anything different at this point? So he's good. Reed Sheppard is good.
And I know the dream is for that kid to come back and just be, well, he's just built different. He has this, he's raised differently. They get it. He's from Kentucky. Here's what I will say. I do think those things are true, and it's a non-zero chance that he comes back. Like I do think even the peak of his draft stock, I do think that there is always going to be something in his gut that says maybe I'm just born to be here, I'm born to play. But I think when it comes down to it, the math will just be so egregious for him to look anywhere else but the draft. And I think that's where Cal steps in and goes, buddy, you are a 6'2", 6'3", 6'3" guard that you're not going to grow any taller. Your vertical is already, you're already an unbelievable athlete for your height and size, all of that. Your vertical is not going to go up anymore. The defensive growth, the lateral quickness, that like all that stuff is marginal big, he's never going to shoot any better. He is a coin flip 3-point shooter. He physically can't. I mean, he's not going to come back and shoot 60% from three. Like, he has capped out everything he could possibly do at the University of Kentucky besides win a national championship. Like, that is the only thing that could be in his gut that says, I gotta win a national championship here. But that's also assuming that he fits with the next recruiting class, that he's, as it's as cohesive of a group with him next to Boogie Fland and so on and so forth. Like, there's a lot of assumptions and things that have to go right, while also, injuries and the things that you just never can account for that make this move a no-brainer for him. I am rooting for him to come back. He's one of my favorite Wildcats to ever play here. He is an absolute joy of a human being. His family is just the best. Everything about this experience has been, you could not write. Tyler Thompson said in our group chat earlier, it's like a Big Blue Nation fan fiction that we're even talking about him as a potential number one pick. And there is a lot of that stuff to this story, that it does feel like this kid is destined to win a national championship at Kentucky before declaring for the NBA draft and becoming an NBA star. Like, it feels like we're living this fan fiction, but reality just is what it is, that if he's a top 5 pick, he has to go, Zach. Like, he has no choice but to go. And I think that's when Cal would step in and just say, buddy, I love you, but you're getting DeJuan Wagner. You're not welcome back. I feel like that's what's going to happen.
But and this is no discredit to Reed, but this is a draft class where there's no clear number one pick. There's really no clear top 5. I mean, I follow these guys on NBA draft Twitter, and some of them are like, if you draft, one of these 3 or 4 the international kids, like top 5, then like you're done. So the differences between 1 and 15 in this draft class really probably isn't that great right now. And that's helping Reed and Rob by association, build up to this point where they're probably top 5, top 10 picks or whatever. But then you have the other side of, if he decides to come back, and like you said, you can't really shoot better than 50%. Even if the kid goes down to 45%, that's still going to be considered a down shooting year. If he's shooting, even though like 1 or 2 more threes a year. So you got to strike while the iron's hot. I think the number one pick gets paid like $18 million a year. He's not making $18 million in NIL at Kentucky. I don't care who steps in to, make it work. Like, he's not making more money per year than Cal is. Like, that's just not going to happen. So that all the signs are pointing for him to go. I think he'll end up leaving, especially if they win a national championship. I mean, then you're talking like best season by one player ever at Kentucky. Like, maybe Anthony Davis probably holds, or at least in the Cal area, Anthony Davis probably holds that with, being the championship, number one pick, going to the Olympics and whatnot. But if Reed can cap this season off somehow by winning a national championship on this Kentucky team, then that's probably the best season any Kentucky player has had under Calipari.
And I think it's because
followed by going in the top 5 in the draft.
And I think it's because of the journey to get here and the pressure on his shoulders to, like, I talked to an NBA team about this. It's like the hype that LeBron had coming out of high school to college, and the expectation for him to be the best case scenario, the perfect example of what a successful LeBron James career was going to be a superstar. And he somehow exceeded those expectations. We've never seen anybody have the level of expectations, and he raised them. So Reed Sheppard is the Kentucky equivalent of that, where he came in as the golden boy, the Mr. Basketball, the son of 2 Kentucky legends. He had all of that weight on his shoulders to come in and just be this game-changing, transcendent in-state talent. He was going to be the narrative shift from John Calipari hates Kentucky kids. There was so much on his shoulders to be successful that even a Reed Sheppard plays 15 minutes a game and contributes to winning was going to be a win for this fan base. So for him to come in and at times, and maybe even just in general, be Kentucky's best player, all-around player, and win games like Starkville. that's a dream. Like that's something that Kentucky fans dream of as they're going to their night on a
I have
Saturday night.
personally had that. I've played that exact scenario out in my backyard when I was like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old 1,000 times, and
That's
he did
like,
it.
and he experienced 33 point, like he experienced that, and then doing what he did in Knoxville, going nuclear and hitting the shots, not just a couple big ones that you go, yay, Reed. Kind of like what we felt in that Kansas game, where that was before we knew Reed was Reed, and he just kind of had a couple big shots, and you were like, kind of selfishly like, yeah, he can do this. At that time, that's all it felt. But for him to go on that stage and in that environment against a top 5 team with so much on the line and just be like, pressure doesn't get to me. This is easy. I think NBA teams will see that. I think that's something to account for as well, that he knows what weight is and he knows how to exceed them. He can't feel pressure more than what he's experiencing right now. And he's somehow surpassing that. And the high floor stuff is something I think they're going to keep in mind when it's am I choosing between a completely random guess, hoping that the international, one of the 4 or 5 international guys that people are in love with, hoping that works out when we have a tangible sample size of greatness with Reed Sheppard against the best of the best in college basketball. I think that's going to come into play with these decisions. So I love Reed. I want him to come back, but I think we should be expecting from here on out that he has 2 more guaranteed games as a Kentucky Wildcat. 2.
Mm-hmm.
The first in the SEC tournament and the first in the NCAA tournament. And we will see what happens from there, how far beyond we get to see. Hopefully it's trying to do math on the top of my head. Hopefully it's 9 more games. That would be a blast. I'd love to see 9 more games of Reed Sheppard, but we'll see. It will be a lot of fun. I guess all SEC teams came out today. Reed being one of them as the SEC Freshman of the Year. He makes the All SEC second team. Antonio Reeves gets All SEC first team, and then Rob Dillingham also gets second team as well. Both of those guys getting all freshman honors alongside DJ Wagner as well. What are your thoughts on all of those unfolding the way they did, Zach? And do you agree with me that there's a little bit of a snub factor with Reed not getting defensive, maybe even player of the year honors over Zakai Ziegler, but at least all defense team?
Did you mention Rob as 6 man?
Yes. Oh, I mentioned him as all freshman, did not mention 6 man. So
my biggest takeaway was I guess they couldn't give Reed both SEC freshman and SEC 6 man. I guess that was probably the only reasoning, or they felt like, well, we got to give Rob one of these 2 awards. Like we can't give them both to Reed. So I think that was probably their thought process for that. But both deserved. I mean, I think you could have gone either way with you. Like I would have had no problem with them naming Rob SEC freshman of the year and then Reed as the 6, like however they decided to do it.
Mm-hmm. But I think that's a choice. I think that's just what the school decides what they're getting voted for, like what they're in the running for. So I think it's just how it works. And I wonder if that's part of it with the defensive stuff too, because
maybe
a dude that's averaging 2.5 steals and breaking the single season record, that guy belongs on a defensive list. I don't know what it is, but he belongs on something.
Well, I mean, I think there is an argument for him to make that all SEC defensive team just because he is so damn good at logging all those steals and the fact that he can block so many 3-point shots. But, some of the reasons that I've been, if I'm ever negative about Reed, it's hating, as Jack. If I'm ever a hater, like a certified hater, it's because of his on-ball defense. And I just think he loses focus a lot too much. And I think that's probably what some of the coaches were thinking when they voted. They were like, yeah, he does all the other stuff that shows up in the stat sheet, but some of the other things that he doesn't necessarily do that great at. But I wouldn't have had any problem with him making all SEC, defense. I think if Ugonna had kind of had more extended minutes and actually got to play the full season, you probably see him on there, just because of how good he is at defending the rim. But there's other parts of defense he's not that great at either. So, and I think someone in our group, I think it was like maybe Adam Luckett said that it just goes to the best defensive player on the best team is kind of defensive player of the year. Fair. And that was kind of, that's why they gave it to Ziegler, because he's just a pest. And he was on the best team. So I didn't really have any thoughts on all defense. I thought that I still think it's hilarious that there's an 8-man first team. I think you could have thrown Reed
That's,
on the first team if you wanted to. I think Connect was deserving of Player of the Year. It was probably went in order. Probably went Connect, Sears, Reeves, or Connect, Reeves, Sears. If like we could see the voting breakdown, Sears, the guy from Bama. So I was fine with how all of it played out. Lamont Paris, I think, was deserving of coach. If it wasn't for
absolutely.
Lamont Paris, Calipari probably wins Coach of the Year, to be honest with you. But
Could you
Lamont Paris had
imagine?
such a
Could you imagine saying that out loud a month and a half ago for Kentucky fans?
no,
Like, could you imagine like
not even a
that
month and a half ago. Yeah,
that select group of this fan base hearing John Calipari SEC Coach of the Year? Like,
blood boiling.
I couldn't imagine the reaction. I would have loved it. I think it would have been hilarious.
Yeah.
But
Well,
the
Todd
person
Golden
who
probably
deserves
would
it
have
got it.
Yeah, Lamont Paris definitely
True.
deserved it. Todd Golden probably deserves some love for that too. Yeah, so I didn't really have any other. I thought all the awards were pretty appropriate. I thought it was like I figured Kentucky would get a third guy on the all freshman team. I figured it would probably be DJ. I didn't think that Justin's resurgence down the stretch here was enough to kind of sneak him on there or anything like that. And obviously the other freshmen haven't really played up to that level either. So I was fine with how everything played out on the award sheet.
Yeah, I completely agree. My only thing is a guy that is about to break the single season steal record at Kentucky.
Probably should have made the list.
There's no excuse. I mean, he's going to beat Rajon Rondo's single season record. So, like, understand the ridiculousness of what he's doing. Fundamental flaws aside of him just as a physical defender, the production is all that matters in a stupid vote like this. So I mean, if Ashton Hagans wins co-defensive player of the year for his sheer steal production, there's no excuse for Reed to not get that as well. So again, when the dude wins SEC Freshman of the Year and it's on all SEC, it doesn't matter. It really does not matter. But I'm glad that the guys that are deserving of any accolades whatsoever are getting. I'm glad that DJ got it as well. That's kind of an undervalued thing.
Deserved.
That's somebody that also got 3 SEC Player of the Week honors. And I know the initial reaction is, how is a guy like DJ Wagner get? That's just because he's politics and all that. No, DJ earned that. DJ really had a productive all-around freshman campaign that was just littered with a bunch of stuff that kind of went on, and injuries, and having overcome that, playing through injury, deciding how long to keep out, like all those things impacted that decision. But when he was on the floor and healthy, DJ is awesome. DJ is a very, very good, productive player that is absolutely deserving of a freshman team. So I think they made the right choices all together. I think the only one that you even have a slight gripe about is Reed with the all defense. So good day for the Cats. It's been a really hectic, just tons of different things at play with winning in Knoxville. Kyra Elzy fired this morning. You follow that up. You get Reed with number one, the number one stuff. You get the all SEC teams. Karter Knox commits to Kentucky. It's just been like a 48-hour stretch of just mass chaos for Kentucky. It's been fun, but it's been exhausting. I'll admit the fatigue is settling in, and we have I don't know, a whole March Madness to go through. So it's not going to slow down anytime soon.
Yeah, I was about to say, if you think it's busy now, just wait until
3
Thursday
days.
starts. Yeah.
Let's talk about a couple of those things. Kyra Elzy fired as the head coach of the women's basketball team. I know you are very familiar and comfortable talking about just the ins and outs of how we got to this point. Good call, bad call, inevitable, and what's next?
Definitely inevitable. Definitely, it was something that just needed to happen. Like they just kind of had to. Oh, I'm Jack now. They just kind of had to get rid of her. I don't know what I'm looking at now. SEC tournament odds. Oh yeah, Tennessee. They're definitely Kentucky should be up at the top there, I think. But to talk about Elzy, it was time to happen. It needed to happen. They just, for whatever reason, the recruiting and roster building was just not where it needed to be. It wasn't anywhere near it wasn't under Matthew Mitchell. She just, for whatever reason, just couldn't get high level SEC players to come and play for Kentucky. I don't know what the reasoning was or why not, but that was just kind of how it worked out. I don't think she's a bad coach by any means. I know that all people involved, all parties involved rave about her as a person. But it was just time. You can't have back-to-back, like, not just losing seasons, but like back-to-back bottom two in the SEC seasons. You just can't have that at Kentucky. So this was a move that even the players knew was coming. I think there was kind of some, not, I don't know if tension's the right word, but the players everyone kind of knew in the last week or so, or week or two, that it was going to come to an end after the SEC tournament. I think that Monday, whenever Mitch Barnhart made the call, was kind of what it was expected. There's going to be a bunch of Matthew Mitchell's name is already being brought up. I just don't see why that makes sense in any sense of the word. It's just that'd be the laziest hire of all time. Like,
agreed.
It's not like Matthew Mitchell had the perfect run here. I know that he won, but the guy hasn't coached for 4 seasons. I don't know how he's just going to jump right back in and do the NIL and the portal. And like if Kyra Elsie couldn't do, I don't understand how Matthew Mitchell's going to come in and just do it after 4 years away. I just don't see that. Like, he stepped away for health reasons in the first place. That would just be, it just doesn't make any sense. So I don't know if that USA.
I think you put it perfectly. It's a lazy hire.
Yeah, I don't know if that USA Today report or whoever that person is. I haven't seen her before on Twitter or anything, but she says that that's the expectation. I think there's been a report about the Florida Gulf Coast head coach. There's been just pretty much social media rumors of the woman from Grand Canyon. There's really no basis for any of that other than the fact that Kentucky fans just like her for the reasons that I'm sure you can figure out if you just Google her name. But so, I mean, there's like, this is, and Barnhart said in the press release that this is a national search. So hiring Matthew Mitchell is the opposite of a national search.
I don't know if you could get any less national.
Yeah,
I think you couldn't get more local if you tried. Like, he is literally still here. He's hanging around. Yeah.
He hangs around the program all the time. So I think that's probably where a lot of those rumors are stemming from, is that he's just still kind of involved with the team and such. But there's going to be 1,000 different options, and it's probably a hire that UK will make pretty quick too, maybe within the next week or so, because they really can't afford to, with the transfer portal especially, you can't afford to let other teams kind of scoop in, especially with the tournament's about to go on. You got to act now, get your players in. But it should be an attractive spot. Like, I know Kentucky has to pay Kyra about $2.5 million out of the buyout, but they should be able to spend $500,000. If they want to spend $1 million a year on a coach, I think they easily can. And they've got a brand new facility coming in. NIL is not that difficult to work with Kentucky. We've seen pretty much every player on the women's team right now has several NIL deals. So that's not an issue either. Like, they'll be able to generate all those things to get here, or to build a respectable program, that should, at least finish in the top half of the SEC. It's just a matter of if Barnhart wants to commit to, actually funding this and breaking in this renovated Memorial Coliseum with a new coach, like some Power 5 assistant who's had 5 years, at the number 2 spot, knows how the portal works, knows how to, recruit players. Like, there's going to be plenty of options out here. The Florida Gulf Coast Gulf coach, Jesus, can't even say that. Florida Gulf Coast, their head coach, like, that kind of checks off some of the boxes. There's going to be a lot of candidates that'll kind of wiggle in and out. I would just be befuddled. That's my word of the day, Jack. I'd be befuddled if Matthew Mitchell was coaching the women's team come next year. And I think it would just be I don't know. There's probably other words I can describe other than lazy, but I would get censored if I said them, so I won't. But I think that they'll make this hire in the next probably 2 weeks, and I expect it to be, a national search, and they're going to go out and find someone who I hopefully think can come in and actually recruit players that are taller than 6'3" and compete and get players on the team that actually are high level SEC caliber players. So yeah,
they're in a good spot, with the timing as well, because the NCAA is starting. Everybody's kind of focused on that run, and you're in that in between where the SEC tournament is over, and you can now start kind of putting together a nice little pitch to whomever may already be available through the portal or whatever. But while everybody else is kind of distracted with the big stuff, you kind of have the resources, the new facility, you have all that stuff, time on your side before the real chaos starts, end of March, early April. So I hope that Mitch kind of uses this time wisely and understands that, yes, the program is at a disadvantage big picture because they have been at the bottom of the SEC for several years now, but they are well positioned long term, why it could be a really, really attractive job for a young up and coming coach that is looking to kind of make a statement for him or herself. So I agree with the move. I think it was the right time, right place, needed to happen, but do not limit yourself. And I love Matthew Mitchell. Matthew Mitchell's awesome as a human being, but there's a difference between understanding momentum with the programs and what would make sense to further the program, not cap your ceiling with what we saw during the actual tangible time that we saw while he was here. We actually have a sample size built up of what that looks like. And I don't think it's the dancing with them, Big Blue Madness and all that stuff. It's fun. It's good, positive memories, but I think that's kind of clouded the actual reality of what that tenure looked like. So we'll see what these next couple weeks look like. On the other side, we got some pretty significant recruiting news where this one kind of came out of left field, kind of. I mean, without the 24 hours leading up to it, some speculation. We talked about it on the message board. If you are not subscribed there, you should probably do that. But it started getting louder and louder that this was a reality. But I'll be totally honest, 48 hours beforehand, I thought he was going to be going overtime elite pro route, Karter Knox. I thought that was, post-grad year at overtime elite. I had heard that was an option he was very seriously considering. I had heard that he was privately committed to Kenny Payne in Louisville for 2 months before we even got to this point to save KP's job. And I just didn't think that was very genuine. Because I don't think Karter was ever planning on actually playing at Louisville, because I don't think anybody really expected KP to be back. So I thought all that stuff was fake. I thought he would ultimately commit to Louisville to save his job. And then when he was inevitably fired, he would end up going post-grad at OTE. That's the way I kind of, the feel I had for it. And then 24 hours leading up to it, credit Travis Graff on Cats Illustrated. He was the first to even hint that Kentucky interest was there. I know, talking to him, he had heard similar stuff about OTE, about Louisville, and that buzz, and he was really the only one that did that. And then I'd reached out to several people that knew the situation better than I did, and they were like, I think this might be Kentucky. I don't know where this came from, but I think that's going to happen. So big surprise out of left field 48 hours before the decision. What did you make of Karter Knox becoming a Kentucky Wildcat?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much the second commitment now in this cycle that we have just kind of expected the player to go elsewhere until literally up until their announcement. Travis Perry kind of being the other guy where we thought it was either a Cincinnati or an Ole Miss. I think in WKU, we're all involved with him. It felt like at one point every one of Knox's 4 finalists were the leader. I mean, even South Florida, I thought, could have made a really good, I'm sure they made a really good pitch. Like their coach, he's the brother of Sharif Abdur-Rahim. I forget his first name, but he's down there. He's got him ranked for the first time in their program's history. He's got his brother playing there. He's a sophomore, I think, transferred from Grand Canyon. Like they had it, nearby. Like, and then OTE, like the OTE thing just kind of made sense. And also at halftime of an OTE finals game, like just kind of all felt like it was lining up to be not Kentucky, and then like the whole Kenny Payne thing, like you were saying. But Cal came out the last second and just got his guy. And we can talk about the connections. Obviously, we've got him with Kevin Knox, and how Cal turned him into. Kevin was the better prospect out of high school and whatnot. So you could see an easier path to him being a lottery pick. Kevin's kind of like a top level 4-star, but I think number 20 as we're seeing down there. And I believe that slots him as a 4-star overall in the On3 industry ranking. And I'm to the point now where I'm going to, because I know there was a lot of pushback, it felt like, on maybe KS board and stuff, and maybe it's part of it is our fault as well, kind of not maybe hyping up Karter as much as maybe we do with other recruits, and that's based on stuff that we've seen with him over the years. Just didn't feel like he was ever the bona fide stud that we watched him play a decent amount in AAU. I think he was with the Florida Rebels, right? Mm-hmm. He was always good, but he was never like a blow you out of the water 5-star type guy. But this, like, he's a recruit that I would just kind of give, especially with how things have played out with Dillingham over the last year. And, you kind of had the mentality controversy, how locked in will he be? I've seen some of those conversations surround Karter as well. I'm going to give Calipari the benefit of the doubt and say that he knows what he's doing with Karter here. The kid's still putting up, he's scoring 23 points per game in overtime lead. I know that Jordan Burks just did the exact same thing last year, but Jordan Burks was playing for one of their like secondary teams. Like he's actually playing in OTE, like he's playing for one of the OTE squads. He's playing alongside other OTE players, whereas Jordan Burks was just more so playing with like his actual high school teammates, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the kid gets buckets. He knows how to score. He shoots at a decent clip. I still kind of have concerns about just how good maybe he is, but when you look at like last year's recruiting class, the top three guys from that class, none of them are projected to be first round picks, and then the fourth and fifth best guy in that class are going to be 3 and 5 in the draft. So I'm going to defer to Cal here and say that he knows what he's doing. I know that there's other options we can talk about, like potential reclasses with guys like Darren Peterson, Will Riley. I will probably butcher his name, Josan Sanan, I think is how you say it, correct? Like those guys are probably, and even Jasper Johnson, like those are all guys that can transfer down or reclass to 2024. Who knows if that's still, I know some of those guys will almost have to because of their age. And will Calipari still go after them at this point? He's already got 6 guys. So it's interesting to see, maybe he thought that he wasn't going to land some of those other potential reclass guys, and that's why he is stuck with Karter. I guess we'll kind of figure out how all those things play out over the next 2 or 3 months or however long it is. But I think it's, if you can get a guy who's in the top 20, who's got a legacy name like Knox, you get him. And, you've got 5 other guys in the class too. So just add them in there and kind of see what you can do with him for next season.
Yeah, I think it's all very fit based, role based. If the buy-in is there, like the question is that some people have for him is the motor, and if he can really be firing on all cylinders, if he will buy into a 3-4 role rather than a 3-2 role, which is kind of a similar thing that we dealt with Chris Livingston. And so some of those things, I totally understand why there would be pushback from the fan base, just in a vacuum. Also kind of understanding that you're now overloading on, again, we kind of had the same conversations this past cycle with, it's a kind of a weaker class overall. It's not necessarily a good thing to just go all in on quantity. We should be focusing on quality, almost similar, spewing the same thing over and over again. And this has worked, especially with Reed and Rob being better than anticipated going in. And it does help that Rob being an OTE graduate, same exact scenario with Karter. So you do want to have a similar, be giving the benefit of the doubt, because Cal's judgment worked with this past class. So clearly he has a vision with this one as well. But what do you do in the portal? Where do you get the experience? Where does the perimeter scoring come from? I know that there is kind of a thought that they're going to add at least one more high school recruit, and I think they're gonna be replacing a lot. Like that's just kind of the reality of the situation. You're going to lose DJ. You're going to lose Rob. You're going to lose, obviously, Antonio, Trey are guaranteed.
Brandon Canada.
What are you going to do there? Z is a guy that I think they would hope would make the decision of, hey, if you look at your long-term upside of what you can be next year with a full year in the strength and conditioning program, all that stuff. But there is kind of an assumption that this was a one-year plan for him too. And you could probably assume that he is going to be out as well. Reed has played himself into where it would be probably a bad decision for him to come back, as much as I would selfishly love it. So now you're talking 6, 7 different guys that have some fringe decision. What happens with the portal? Ugo has been a rumored portal guy, behind the scenes. Trilly Donovan has publicly put his name in a portal sheet of guys to keep an eye on. So like, it's not even a secret. The dude was in the portal 8 months ago. So it's not even like it's the secret that that could be a complicated one to keep an eye on as well. So when you look at all the factors, what happens with
Aaron.
Aaron is the big one. Aaron is one that I have actually heard solid things about the possibility of him coming back. If you get that, Justin, I believe, is gone as well. So you're going to have to replace numbers when you start looking at different production. If you kind of pencil Karter in as the Justin Edwards role, I think that's a great kind of what the production could be as an expectation. I think that ends up being a good get. So if you kind of just go piece by piece, Cal's going to want to recreate the magic of this season with the offensive success and the fun and all that. The year start to end growth. He loved this is his stuff. This is his cup of tea. I don't think he's totally in love with the portal route. So for him to get this experience, he's going to want to recreate it as much as possible. And this is a way to do that. I have questions. I have some wait and see things for me that I'm going to have to, before I get really, really confident in what the next year's roster looks like. Boogie Flan has played really, really, really well, just won a state title. He was a question I had, how efficient was he going to be? But we had the same conversations about Rob. That experience has been excellent. So you can feel confident about that. Jaden Quaintance is a bona fide star. I feel very confident in his success. So you can start piecing things together, but I still think that there are some concerns, big picture, that I will leave to the guy that's making $10 million a year to make. That's what gives me the confidence.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's just going to boil down to what kind of happens with those three big guys, with Ugo, Z, and Aaron. Once you figure out, what the situation is with those three, that's when I think you can really pin down how the roster is going to actually look. Because it'd be nice to get just one of those three. You really don't need all three. You probably don't even need two of them back with Quaintance coming in. You really just need one. Whoever that is probably doesn't truly. I mean, personally, I'd probably rather have Big Z coming back
for fun reasons, absolutely.
But even you and I were talking. I think it was the Vandy game. We were like, because I think Aaron had like a stretch in that game where he was playing really well, and it was Vandy. But we looked at each other. We were like, man, if this kid comes back, like he can be a really, really good starting player for Kentucky. He just has to get some money. He's got to go to the weight room and live in the weight room all summer.
Absolutely.
But if he does that, like the kid can be really good. Like it's clear that he's not shy on confidence or anything. So he's got the tool. Like he's got the tools to play really high level basketball. So, but I think that's really what it'll all boil down to is what happens with those guys. Can you get a guy like Jordan Burks to come back? Can you keep Adu Thiero? Can he come back?
Adu's the one that you got to get that guy back. Got to.
Yeah. Because I mean, I don't think that he's going to be a guy that ends up getting drafted, but I'll be shocked if he doesn't at least test the waters and see like what's out there. Like, maybe he can sneak into being a second round pick or something, or maybe he just wants to go somewhere. Like, you never know how things are going to play out now in the portal world. It's to me, it's just going to boil down to the three bigs and what happens with them. And once you figure that out, then you can really start to build your roster. For lack of better words, build around those or whatever guy decides to come back, and then put that guy with your freshman class, and then go forward and see if you can keep other pieces like Jordan or Do, or if you need to go to the portal and they'll probably need to at least get one guy or at least probably two guys honestly from the portal, guys that can score, maybe another Reeves type guy that's gonna be hard to obviously just find a guy like Antonio Reeves in the portal, but not exactly to that sort of skill level, but someone similar in that style where you can just a guy that can go get a bucket. So
call your shot. Name who returns for Kentucky. Name them.
Ooh, name them
on the spot.
Joey Hart comes back. I'll say Aaron Bradshaw. Aaron will come back. And then I'll say Jordan and Adu. And I think that's probably the only four you get. I'm not looking at a roster right in front of me, but I feel confident that Justin and DJ will ultimately leave. I'm a guy that even when DJ was playing bad, I thought that there's no way just an NBA team wasn't going to take him in the first two rounds because of his mentality and just his family track record and all the glowing reviews he'd get from Cal and everything. And, we still have enough of a sample size to know that he's a good player. Yeah, so I think it's probably just those four scholarship guys that I would say right now are coming back. I think Big Z goes to the draft. You could see Ugo transferring. So there's obviously all this can change, but as of March 11th at 5:43 when we're recording this, that's what I'm going to say is those four.
I think you nailed it. I think that's it. I think those are the four.
We had no prior conversations about that either. Look at this. We've been talking about us being on the same page before, and I think that's just the reality of it is we are connected.
Yeah, I feel good about that group. I think there's an understanding with AB that the vision is there. He's happy here. He's just not ready yet, but he will be. So I think that's where there's kind of mutual optimism about what his path looks like here. And, I think the people around him, as we've talked extensively about the dynamic at play there, I think that's in a solid spot that I think everybody involved understands that AB probably needs another year, and he's not in a rush to get out. So I would expect AB, Joey Hart, Jordan Burks. Jordan's kind of an interesting one because he's shown just enough like little tiny flashes that what happens if he were to go portaling, and I think there would be some high major interest. Like, he was committed to Ole Miss forever. Like, that's a guy that could go to Ole Miss and get buckets. You know what I'm saying? So that's going to be an interesting dynamic to play out. I think he ultimately does decide to come back. I think Cal really likes him and wants him around. So that's one I'm keeping an eye on. And Adu, I think when the people around, Dad, Adu himself, I think when everybody looks at his options and understand, like, he's already got a really nice role here. He has grown so much over the course of the last year, physically and just in terms of production. I think it would be a bad decision on his part to even try to mess with what's working right now. Like, it's very clearly a recipe for success, him physically kind of figuring himself out as a basketball player. I think it would be a bad decision on his part to try to mess up what's working. So I think he might explore the draft, test the waters. He might internally think, well, maybe I could go, transfer back into the Northeast and, play 35 minutes a game and get all these touches and all that. But I think when push comes to shove, reality will set in with him that this is the place that he needs to be. And it would be a bad decision on his part to try to mess up with what's working. So I feel good about that. I feel good about Joey coming back. I feel like that's probably the core group right now, those four. And you pray to the basketball gods that Reed has an Oscar level epiphany that he needs to come back and for one final run just for the sake of doing it, because that would be a game changer. And then you don't have to go to the portal and find an Antonio Reed's replacement, because you feel pretty darn good about Reed being the guy who can go hit the big shots and be a high volume kid as well. So the foundation is there, but some just little kind of nitpicky things to consider as we kind of come into the home stretch and wrap up postseason play. Let's get out of here with one final thought, Zach. What happens this week in Nashville? We get to go down there together. We will drive down early Thursday. We'll keep an eye on how that game before us takes place on Thursday night, and then all hell breaks loose on Friday. How you feeling about Kentucky's chances, and who do you think wins the big one on Sunday?
It's tough. I think their first round matchup, like as the graphic says down there, Ole Miss and Texas A&M, I think that's a pretty good draw for Kentucky to have for their first round. I would be concerned with either of those two teams. I think that really the only thing that would scare me personally is a potential rematch with Tennessee in the championship game. We've kind of had two ends of the whatever word I'm looking for there. Like, Tennessee kind of routed Kentucky in the first game, and had Rob Dillingham not scored 35, that game's probably a lot worse. Kentucky kind of took it to Tennessee the entire game in the second time out, and had Dalton Knecht not scored 40, it probably looks a lot worse. So I think that game's probably going to be, if that's what it ultimately ends up being, Kentucky and Tennessee in the championship, that will be a back and forth haymaker type, like best game of the year type situation. Like, I'm almost hoping that that's kind of how it plays out. But I think Kentucky will have a pretty, I wouldn't say easy, but they are set up to get themselves to Sunday, I think, pretty easily. They just have to take care of business in those first two games. But I don't think there's anyone on, or that's on the bracket right now that is setting up to, I don't think Kentucky's really concerned with Alabama right now. I think Tennessee is probably the only team you're actually worried about. And, after you've just smacked them on their home court, I feel like they would probably go in with some confidence with that. I guess it'll just come down to does Cal care? Does he care enough for them to even win?
I think he does. I think
I think he cares.
I think this is all for show. I think he's minimizing it, and I think internally they're going, let's go beat the brakes off of these teams that thought that we were, oh, Kentucky's washed. They're, we're SEC's better parity. All of this nonsense. Like, I think Cal has this like internal mindset of let's go run the table in Nashville and prove that we are still the kings of the SEC, and then let's keep that momentum rolling into March. I think that's going to be the mindset going into the this week in Nashville, and then obviously the following week and beyond when we get to the national stuff with the NCAA tournament. So we had a lot of fun. It's gonna be a lot of fun coming up. Nonstop coverage with us at KSR. I mean, just sources say we'll be doing shows all the way through the week down in Nashville. This YouTube page is going to be popping. The website's going to be popping. KS Board's going to be popping. You're just not going to want to miss any of this coverage. So keep a very, very close eye on all of those things. While you're keeping an eye on those things, keep an eye on some of these things. How about the Sources Say podcast is brought to you by Andy Ludicky and MyPerfectFranchise.net. Andy is a franchise consultant as well as franchise owner and helps people find franchises that fit their skill sets, financial requirements, time to commit, and more. His services are 100% free, and he is here to help. If you have any questions about business ownership, you can learn more and contact Andy anytime at www.myperfectfranchise.net. And then we also have a message from our latest partner, Monticello Bank.
Well, hello, Cindy.
A lot of banks are changing hands these days. Not Monticello. We've been building relationships since 1895. And with each passing year, we've grown.
Hello, Cindy.
Hi.
And expanded our services to meet the needs of the communities we serve.
Are you forgetting something?
Monticello Bank, Equal Housing Lender, member FDIC.
Well, Zach,
I remember those suckers. Man. I would be pissed if I left the bank. If I left Fifth Third Bank growing up without a blue raspberry sucker, I was pissed the whole ride home.
Well,
so I understand, Cindy.
Well, thanks to our friends at Monticello Bank, you're going to get a sucker, and you're going to get just otherworldly help there. Appreciate all of their continued support and partnership. It's been a blast with them. It's been a blast with you, Zach. This has been a lot of fun, and a lot of fun to recap, but also plenty of excitement moving forward here as we head down to Nashville. Are you ready? You got your dancing shoes on, and you got a go-to bar you're excited to hit when we're on Broadway?
Buddy, I've went to Nashville one time forever ago. I've actually never done Nashville post 21. So I need you and Drew to just just put a leash on me and drag me around. Well, actually, people might stop and stare at that one if we do that, but tell me where to go, and I'm ready for anything. So I'm prepared. I'm bringing my I should have worn my Reed and Rob shirt that I got from our boy Scotty Fries. But I'll be bringing that down with me, so I'm ready. That's actually the only shirt I'm going to pack. So no pants or anything. That's all we're going.
Ooh, I can't wait. Zach, this is a lot of fun, man. Thank you so much for jumping in. You're awesome at this, and it's been a blast to cover this very fun team with you at Rupp Arena, and the reward is going to be just so nice. I can't wait for the payoff here this week and beyond. So, Zach, let's get out of here. Where can fans find your work?
Find me, as always, at Kentucky Sports Radio. You can also follow me on Elon Musk's app at ZGagan That's GeoGhegan. What is it, Jack?
Triple G, baby. Triple G.
Triple G.
You can often find me on Elon Musk's app when I'm not in Twitter jail.
Yeah.
Typically, you can find me at Jack Pilgrim KSR. Go subscribe to KSR Plus. We're having a blast over there. Growing community, the fastest Kentucky community in the world. In the entire world, it's the fastest growing community. Go join us over there. If you're not subscribed to KSR YouTube page right now, why are you even watching this? We have a blast. We have fun. Just go ahead and do it. Nobody takes life seriously around here. We just have fun and play games and just do dumb stuff. So make sure you subscribe there, and we'll be back. I don't know. We're going on to Nashville. We'll probably do random shows throughout the week. You'll find us at some point here on the YouTube page when we're down in Nashville. We will see you then.